project?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Who just spoke? Who just reacted to me? I'm trying to project the participant so that I can. Okay.
My name is Tommy.
Oh, Tommy. All right. Welcome, Tommy. Okay. So I think we can just start this now so that we can finish on time. So my name is Okon Precious, right? I work as a business analyst, practicing business analyst with Globus Bank, and also freelance for some other organizations too. So can you confirm if you can also see my screen so that I know that we're on the same page? Lawa, can you confirm, please? Or Abigail, Abimbola, anybody can. Okay, Shin Yellow has given me a thumbs up. Okay, so I can just start now. Maybe I can, let me bring this down. All right, so good day, everyone. Hope we had a nice day. So today was so hectic, so forgive my PowerPoint presentation, right? I had to just ensure that I compile something before presenting. So I'll just quickly move over to today's topic. So today's topic is acceptance criteria. Okay, I still want to be able to see this. Okay, I think this is better. Can you see my screen clearly? Like this stuff is not blocking it, just to be sure. Okay. So is it clearer this way? Or maybe let me just bring this down. So I would appreciate that as we are going on, if there are questions or if there are contradictions, right, to what is being taught, it's a free playing ground for us to also learn, right, and for us to improve on our performance, even as BAs or potential or prospective BAs, as the case may be. So it is better that most times, how you know a business analyst is that they are very, very curious. They ask multiple questions, plethora questions, just to ensure that the requirement is clear enough. So because business analyst job can be very, very complicated in terms of dealing with majorly subject matter experts, and then you are trying to elicit requirements. I believe we would have done things around elicitation and collaboration. Okay, so please, can you just confirm again if you can hear me? Not a thumbs up this time because I might not be able to see who is giving me a thumbs up. So can anybody
Yes,
just
you are audible.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate. So this is so as I was saying, there are various knowledge areas, right? About 6 knowledge areas within and the business analyst book of knowledge. And that is a level analysis task, right? So in business analysis, there is a lot for us to keep on learning. And then because of the emergence of AI, there are a lot of things that are changing, right? Where there are areas where you work on requirements documentation, and then you have your chat GPT and other tools that can help you, right, come up with these documents. So as BA, we need to now go further, like go advance in terms of improving around our strategy analysis. You should be able to ask the relevant questions and also be able to document those responses. And one other difficult area is us stakeholders engagement, right? So just trying to highlight some areas within the business analysis space where we need to focus on. And when you are dealing with stakeholders, stakeholders are people that have interest in your business need, interest in your solution, interest in the change. So most times you are trying to elicit requirements from let me call them business, as we call them in the banking system, the people that initiate a request, either a change request or BROD. They are always they are always called the business guys, right? Which are various departments. So most times, if you have knowledge gap within that system, so in most times you are trying to elicit requirements from, let me use for example, a finance department. So look at a finance department in terms of processing their financial instructions. Probably they are still outdated, using paper and printer, right, or scanner to do the end-to-end of their finance processing. And then they are looking at it as, this is our pain point, this is our problem, this is our challenge. This is what we are experiencing, right? This is what we are experiencing, and we need this to be automated. We need this to be changed. So that is where our task begins, right? Where you have to now get to understand what their current state is, right? So when you understand what their current state is, what exactly are their processes? What systems do they use today, right, to carry out transactions? And if there are no systems, how can we build an application or a system that can cater for that manual process? So, and one thing you must understand is that, requirement is another word for need or problem. You are trying to ensure that you understand and get clarity. So, and once you do that, once you are able to document what their current state is, you should be able to translate this into requirements. So it can be a functional requirement. You could use a user story, right? You can use a user story, usually comes with an acceptance criteria. So you can also use these various techniques. And there are areas where you need to come up with a process flow. Okay, who starts the process? After starting the process, what are the activities in between, right? Activities in between that would trigger the next process. And all these process models or process flows needs to be documented and clearly stated. So these are various techniques and tools, right? So let me just quickly go straight to acceptance criteria. But before we go ahead, are there any questions or concerns? Okay, somebody should give me a thumbs up so that I can go to the next slide. Okay, thank you, Lawa, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Lawa, thank you, Oluwatomisin. Okay, so we can just go on. So acceptance criteria, as the word explained, acceptance. So it's a criteria that most of the business people have that must, before you can say a solution is successful. You don't want to be trying to log in. You are trying to log into your banking app, your mobile app, and then you are receiving errors, and then you are receiving different system errors, or you can't even, if you click on the login button, it keeps on rolling and rolling. So acceptance criteria is saying these are the minimum requirements or conditions, right, that this solution must meet before we can say this solution is successful. So based on what like I said, I wrote down here that defining success and value in business analysis, what are the checkbox that your user will check and say, yes, okay, if this has been met, this has been met, this has been met, then this solution is successful. It can be any application, right? It could be your mobile app that we are trying to add additional features. For example, maybe you can't do foreign transfer on your mobile app. For those of us using several mobile apps, UBA, Zenith, you can't do a foreign transfer. And they come to you as a BA, please, we want to be able to transfer money internationally, right? And that features or functionality is not currently existing within the mobile apps. You have to start the whole process, right? And what we do, we are the bridge between the business and then the technical team. So if the technical team have any bits of they are experiencing some bits of trouble understanding what the business did, you are the best first person they would meet to say, please, we are not sure of what this means. So it defines value, defines success in business analysis. So let me go to the next slide. Just hold on. Like I said, please permit my slide. I just had to run through this. So this is saying by the end of this session, right, participants should be able to understand the meaning of acceptance criteria, right? Learn how to define criteria based on value attributes and apply criteria using reward BA examples. Avoid common mistakes in writing acceptance criteria. So we'll be using reward BA examples, and what we'll be leveraging on is what everybody knows. That's our mobile banking app. Think because we can relate clearly with it, so we should be able to understand this. So the next slide says why this topic matters. Many projects fail despite clear requirements, right? So stakeholders often say this is not what we expected. Another one says that's not how we imagined the application to be. Even if they want to, you see, you don't want to develop a solution that once you finish, it is better they are using. Just imagine a department maintaining staff records using an Excel. Let's just imagine it. So you are maintaining staff records using an Excel. They are manually entering these staff records on each cells of the Excel, each columns of the Excel. And then they are tired of doing that. And how do they get this information? They get this information through possibly various sources, data sources, as it is called in business analysis. So once you pick up this, okay, let me look for a name here. Okay, let me use Lawa. Let me use Lawa. So you are trying to update Lawa's information as a staff within your banking system. So you now enter the date of birth, you enter the grade, enter so many other stuffs. They are maintaining it on an Excel. What it means is that it is possible that tomorrow the Excel is saved in a OneDrive and then they can't find the Excel again. Or it is possible that what is maintained safe did not go through any approval process. So one fresher that they just employed in the HRO team just picked up the Excel, maintained any record in any format, no structure and all those stuff. And they are telling you that this problem is a lot for us. Please we need this process automated. Let's have even an approver that will approve what a fresher or initiator has already inputted. So once you finish building the solution, hope they will not say it is better we go back to our Excel. It is better that we maintain the Excel we are using. This is your solution. Your application is giving us problem. For many of us that are BAs here, we would have experienced that. And for even those that have had a bit of relationship with solution or application development, you would have experienced that. So rather go back to the Excel because your solution, you elicited the requirements, possibly you did not ask the right questions. Possibly in your stakeholders engagement, not all relevant stakeholders are there. That is why it is important you have a stakeholders mapping. Stakeholders mapping is that you are trying to identify the subject matter experts. Who are the domain subject matter experts? There are people within the department that really understand their current process. Who are they? Go on field work, get their names, list them out. What is their level of influence? Get their timing, get their attitude, get to understand them. That's why most times they do a stakeholder personnel and then your user personnel. You want to understand who these users are. Then another thing is that you need to now go, they have implementation subject matter experts. These guys are the technical guys. You want to also list them out. You want to also do a stakeholder mapping to know that and know everybody that are involved in a solution. So imagine now, after building the solution, you have deployed to production, and now they are saying, this is not what we expected, though. That's not how we imagined it. The missing link is often how success was defined. How did you define your success? Which is your acceptance criteria. So acceptance criteria kind of close the gap kind of close the gap. So we don't, there are successful projects, several successful projects, but failed products. You are done with the end-to-end of project delivery or project life cycle. After you finalize it, your customers or end users are using your product and they are like, they are clicking on submit button. Submit button is not submitting. They are trying to preview a document within an application. They are unable to do that. So these functionalities are really not working. And before you can check and say, okay, well, let's mark this as working, it must be performing the function of which you have already specified, and it must meet the user's expectation. So let's move further. But if there are questions, we can interrupt us, or if there are contradictions, please ensure to interrupt me so that we all can learn, right, to understand um, these activities or this technique properly. So we have the value attributes, right? The essence of anything to a user or a stakeholder is value. What is the usefulness of what you have developed? What is the usefulness to me? Okay, you are building a mobile app. What can I use your mobile app for? Will users be able to pick up the mobile app and perform transactions? If you want to imagine you trying to transfer to another bank, a customer of another bank, and it's not going through, which means there is something wrong. So there must be value delivery. That is why if you look at the business analysis core concept model, for many of us that have gone through it, the core concepts include value. Value is very important. If your solution is not valuable to your end users, it is better off we roll it and say we don't want to use it and just revamp it entirely. So what are the value attributes? Characteristics that determine a solution's value, that are agreed upon by stakeholders, that drive both acceptance, right? We want the end users to accept our solution. An examples of value attribute is cost, the performance, usability, security, reliability, scalability, and compliance. So you want your application to be usable. You want your performance to be 100%, and you want to be able to reduce cost for the organization. So there are a lot of things like scalability. For example, now, what is scalability to us is that, for example, you are building an application, and then that application, you made provision or you catered for only 100 users. Now, in the future, right, in the future, you might have up to 1,000, 2,000 users. Are there provisions, right? Are there provisions for the expansion of these users to be able to utilize the solution at the same time? So these are things that we need to consider when we are trying to draft out our value attributes. We talk about reliability. So if your solution is not reliable, and it's just like you are even frustrating the end users even more, right? Or maybe you are not reducing the cost of them carrying out an activity within your mobile app. So let me quickly go to the next, right? I'll read this through. Value attributes are characteristics of a solution that determine or substantially influence its value for stakeholders. Now, they represent a meaningful and agreed upon decomposition of the value proposition into its constituent parts, which can be described as qualities that the solution should either possess or avoid. Now, examples of value attributes include ability to provide specific information. So, like mostly, especially in the banking system, there are a lot of audits going on, a lot of reporting going on. CBN can come to you at any time and say, okay, give us information on A, B, and C. You must provide it. And that is why on most applications, you see, for example, you can see probably applications that maintain assets of an organization. If CBN should come and say, provide me this, you need to ensure that on your solution, right, the solution you are building for these guys, they can generate a report. And all specific information must be contained on that report. So these are acceptance criteria mostly that we must meet. Now, ability to perform or support specific operations, right? Performance and responsiveness characteristics. Like I said, performance. Like what we have, like if your solution is not performing efficiently, it is not something that the user will be comfortable with or be happy with. Even you yourself, you won't be able to, because the performance is low. They call it performance efficiency in terms of non-functional requirement. Then responsiveness. Now, for example, like I said, you are trying to log on to your mobile app. I know most of us might have experienced it. You enter your username, enter your password, and you click on login, no response. You click on login, it's just loading, 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 loading. In fact, you will be frustrated and you try to use other mobile apps. So these things are things that we need to consider, right, when we are developing a solution and when we are coming up with our acceptance criteria. Applicability of the solution in specific situations and context. Availability of specific features and capabilities. Everything within an application, you have your features. Capability is what the solution can do, what those functionalities can do. When you initiate a request and send it to your authorizer to authorize. Your authorizer should be able to click on an approve button and be able to approve that request, right? You can even say, let's even utilize like a Jumia app. Imagine you coming up with a store, right? An app store where you sellers and buyers can just meet, and then you are now like your user or your buyer is coming into Jumia app to select a particular product and add to cart. Imagine you adding to cart and nothing is adding to cart. So these are the things that we need to look at. All capabilities must be on point before you can guarantee that a solution is a success, right? And we have usability, security, scalability, and reliability. Security is very, very vital, very, very vital, because one is that it's around data privacy. You don't want anybody, any fraudster to come and hack your application and then harvest your customers' data without their consent. In fact, it is punishable. They have what we call NDPA, that's Nigerian Data Protection, I think, right? That the complete meaning of it, but it's a data protection body, right, within Nigeria that ensures that your customers' data are safe and secured. So these are things you need to look out for when customer enter buy into your solution. What exactly are they safe with their information or their data, right? And see, so this is based on Babok definition. Hello, please, can you confirm if you can still hear me so that
Yes, you're audible.
okay, okay. So I'll be doing this one of just to confirm that everyone is with me. And if we have questions, please do not hesitate to ask so that like this is Babok definition of acceptance criteria, right? Acceptance criteria describe the minimum set of requirements that must be met in order for a particular solution to be worth implementing. Now, they may be used to determine if a solution or solution component can meet a requirement. Acceptance criteria are typically used when only one possible solution is being evaluated and are generally expressed as a pass or fail. Now, for example, most times you see the business comes up with a business. So here in the financial institutions, it depends on the culture and structure of that organization that you work. You know, various industries with their various kind of the way they work and the way their culture is applied, right? So for some organizations, right, the business comes up with they call it stated requirements in business analysis. So the business does not really have a full grasp or idea of how to come up with a business requirement document or a change request, as the case may be. So in the banking industry, right, in terms of the way it is operated, like when a business has a need, what they do is that at the minimum, they should state what they want. That is their requirement. They should state that, okay, we want this solution to do this and do that. They should be able to state what their current process is, because there's a bit of document analysis, which is another technique in business and Babok, right? Because you need to review the document and then use that as a standpoint. So now, for example, the business comes up with a BROD. No, not a BROD, a stated requirement document where they have stated what they want, right? So once they do that, but for that's what we call BROD within this structure. Then change request is when possibly, like you have your mobile app and you want to add additional features, you want to add additional functionalities, then you can come up with a change request. What it means is that we want to enhance this, we want to add this. But once it is a new application, an application that has not been developed at all, then you come up with a BROD that contains full description. You need to have your risk, your benefit, everything included, your constraints, your current process. So now, at the minimum, right, we want to know what and what should we have on the solution that you can that you can check and say, yes, this is a successful solution. So that is when you now come up with your acceptance criteria. Then you start listing it out. Your system, you should be able to enter your username. I'm using a mobile app now because that is what every one of us is familiar with. You should be able to enter your username. You must be able to enter your password. You must be able to click on a login button to access the dashboard. So if those criteria are not met, there is no way you can say that solution is successful. So acceptance criteria is saying describe the minimum set of requirements that must be met. You see, this word here is very intentional. Must. So without those minimum set of requirements being met, you cannot deploy that solution to production. Never. So that our customers will now say, what have you done? So these are things, minimum requirement that must be met. They may be used to determine if a solution or solution component can meet a requirement. Now, you see the other one is saying acceptance criteria associated with requirement, product, or delivery cycle that must be met. You see, the word must has always been reoccurring, being met in order to achieve stakeholders' acceptance. Before your stakeholders can say, we accept this, ensure that the developers, they've been able to meet all this minimum set of requirements, every one of them, right? Acceptance criteria are used to define requirements, right, outcomes or conditions that must be met in order for a solution to be considered acceptable to key stakeholders. Just like you going on an interview and the what are they calling it? The industry or the company you are trying to apply for has given you a job description. Job description is also a representation of requirements. These are the minimum. You must be a 2-1 student or a first class. You must have a BSc. You must have this. So when you see that you are a 2-2 and you are coming to apply for such job, you already know that you are not going to get the job. You are not going to be successful. So these are conditions that have been placed that you must meet this condition before you can deploy your solution to even your end users. So that is why it deals with a lot of, how should I put the word? A lot of due diligence and thorough elicitation and collaboration. Elicitation means that that's why we don't use requirements gathering in business analysis. We use requirement elicitation. It's a fact-finding mission. You have to ask them, and do a form of functional decomposition. If they tell you that we want to be able to log in, what are you supposed to, is it just to log in? What are the other things that you need to provide, right, before you log in? So these are things we need to look out for. So let me quickly, a minute, please. All right, please, can you confirm if you can still hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate. So the next slide is saying most times your acceptance criteria, it's a user a, must follow a user story most of the times, right? Maybe supplemented with other analysis models as needed. So once the core concept model value, you hello?
Yeah, hello.
Oh, apologies. I think the network threw me out. Going back to, all right. Please, can you confirm if you can see my screen now?
It's still loading.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So when it starts, when you can see it, you can let me know so that.
Oh, I can see it now.
Oh, all right. Thank you so much. So
Yeah.
now, like I was explaining, so what are the minimum conditions a solution must meet? So I'll just run through it since I've explained this. So used when one solution is being delivered, expressed as pass or fail, validated through testing, right? So most times, let me just, for many of us who might have known or we might know the project development life cycle, right? So what happens in a typical project process is that once a request is shared, now a department is experiencing trouble within their processes. So they document something. Ensure they document something. So most organizations, right, or most BAs, they are the ones that do the documentation. But one thing you must know is that there are several other documents, other techniques, other documentation that are required from the business analyst. And right, you have functional requirement specifications. That is different from what a user story is, which a user story can also be part of it. You have a process model, right, where you draw process flow. It's possible that you might need to draw a data flow model. So most importantly, you must have the business document something. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because we've had experience where the BA was asking questions. Okay, what is this process called? What is the name of this? Okay, when you do this, what happens next? When you are trying to do a transaction, maybe a teller in a bank is trying to post a transaction, what do you do? And then you start writing it down, documenting it. You might end up documenting it honestly, and later the business is like, was I the one that gave you this requirement? No, I didn't say this. No, I didn't say was I the I never, I can't remember me giving you A, B, and C. What would you say at that point? It will be your word against the person's word, and it will be like you developed a solution all by yourself. That is why most times you use maybe when you are like a Zoom call now, you have to record every conversation for you to even justify yourself as a BA. You have to then ask. That's why it is important that they document something. What do you want? You are the owner of the process. We call them process owners. You own this process. Document what the current state is. Why is it giving you problem? What do you want us to do? Then with that, right, you can now build on those documents. Okay, you want us to do this, you want us to do that. Build on those documents, come up with your functional requirement specification. If it has to do with a process, come up with your process model. Come up with your, sometimes you do a state modeling. Then you can now say, okay, this was the document you leveraged on. So if anything is changing in the future from the business perspective, they can now raise a change request, also well documented and signed off. Very, very important, well documented and signed off by some stakeholders, so that they will not come back and say, I was not the one that shared this with you. Now, in the elicitation process, where after they've documented, though, you now have a stakeholders engagement meetings where you have all relevant stakeholders in that call. If anything is changing, they should go back and update that document. So that document is like a living document. Update the document before we start development. Right? So when you do that, it is very important so that you can say, sir, or talk to, when you are speaking to your supervisors or the management, as the case may be, you are presenting something that this business have documented. And these are the minimum conditions a solution must meet, right? Use when solution is being delivered, especially. So for the testers, like after, let me give you a summary process of project life cycle, right? So the business comes up with a document, you give it to a BA analyzed the document, and there are questions to ask to get further clarity. You do a stakeholders engagement where you elicit requirements, ask them questions. And this one that you have specified, what do you want us to do with it? What does it mean? Because you are not, now, don't confuse, don't be trying to be the subject matter expert in a process that you don't own. BAs are not domain subject matter experts. We learn from A, learn from B, learn from C, then we gather experience from that. Not like you want to be, no, ask questions from the people that own the process, right? So once you do that, once you complete everything, and then we are fine, we are good, then you now give it to a designer. Sometimes some BA, they do some wireframing, some prototyping, as the case may be. So you give it to a designer, a product designer, to design what the solution should look like. Now, there's a difference between requirement and design. Requirement, if you look at the Bible guide, it means a representation of a need. You are trying to represent the business need. But a prototype, that is a design, is a representation of how the solution should look like. So for every solution you are using today, like your mobile app, there is always a requirement document and there is always a prototype. Now, the reason why there is a prototype is that before we start coding, before we start putting in HTML, CSS, and all those stuff, let us ensure that there is a picture of how the solution should be like. So once that happens, after they've done the prototyping, you have to now give it to the business, do a review with the business. Look at what we've done. What do you think? Does it make sense? Is it okay? Have we met the minimum conditions? The acceptance criteria we have specified, has he met it? So once that happens and they give their sign off on that prototype, you can now say, okay, developers have this. And guess what? Your prototype might not contain business rules. So business rules they have definitional business rules. They have behavioral business rules. Now, this is the way the behavior of the system. So the developers should be able, the backend developers, they deal with a lot of logic. For example, if there are some transactions that are maybe foreign, let me give an example. You are trying to transfer 100 USD, possibly from a Naira account. So they would have applied the logic backend to be able to know the Naira, the dollar equivalent, or the Naira equivalent of that amount you are trying to send. So you must also be able to document a business rule, which is part of the technique. But here now we are dealing with acceptance criteria since we are not talking about that. So let me just proceed. So if this condition is not met, we do not accept the solution. Please take note of this. Once these conditions are not met, we do not accept the solution. Right? Okay. I think because of the scarcity of time, let me just move faster, right? So in terms of when you are there's a part of solution evaluation as one of the knowledge areas, and there's a task there called access solution limitation. So when you are assessing solution limitation, you are trying to find out why is the solution not performing as expected, right? What are the constraints within that solution? What is the problem? So you need to go back to your acceptance criteria to say, was this met? Was this checked? So those are the criterias, those are the KPIs, indicators to say yes, your solution should be performing well. But if it is not performing well, which means there are gaps, right? So acceptance and evaluation criteria. Okay, we are not talking about evaluation criteria. So evaluation criteria has to do with several solutions, trying to pick which one is the best, right? So use both to indicate the level at which acceptance criteria are met or anticipated to be met by the solution, and to identify any criteria that are not met by the solution. Very important. Now, user acceptance test, assessing whether the delivered solution meets the needs of the stakeholder group that will be using the solution. The assessment is validated against identified acceptance criteria. You know, for what I was trying to explain the life cycle, right? So when the prototype is ready and the business users, the end users have signed off on it, they've certified that, okay, this is the way we want our solution to look like, we are fine with it. You now pass it to the developer. So developer will now replicate what is on the prototype with their codes, right? They now come up with the necessary functionalities, components that have been designed. So once that is done, they are done with that development. They pass it over to the quality assurance team. Now, the quality assurance team is the same as testers. So there must be somebody to test what you have done and say, oh, this component is working. You are clicking on a login button is working. You are trying to enter your username is working. You are trying to make a transfer. All those things are working. Those components are working. Those are the testers that certify that. So what they don't use the design or the prototype to certify. What they use majorly is your business requirement document or your acceptance criteria. Now they now come up with different test cases, right, that you can use in certifying. So let me quickly move to the next slide so that we don't waste more time. So now there is a Gherkin example of acceptance criteria. Now, most times when you are specifying and modeling a requirement, this is one method, right? So for example, this is one project we worked on. The system must process customer charges correctly. So what the solution was supposed to do was that there is a general government platform, right? I had to put this here because it was a recent. So there is a general government platform where customers of banks, including you and myself, can go and say, if, for example, you want to import products from outside Nigeria. So there is a general platform you go. Now, before it was called single window, but now it is now called Biodogo. So when you go to that platform to initiate a Form M, it means a form for import. So you input several details, several information, your own information, right? Once you input that, so now what the problem we were trying to solve was that several other customers, customers from different banks were going to that platform to initiate Form Ms. And we need to be able to get our own customer, right? Let's pull the records of our own customer to our own platform that we have built, because we can't have our users go to that platform and be checking for, and they will be seeing bulk of several requests coming from other banks. So we now did that. So once we do that, we are supposed to collect charges, right? Just like when you make a transfer to other bank, there are specific charges, right, that are collected. So we need to take that charge. So we painted this scenario. The system must process customer charges correctly. Now, one thing is that he said, so this is the Gekin method, right? Giving a valid customer thing exists in CIB when the system, so it's giving when, then, and then, yeah, then and I wanted to say then and. So I figured out that the last parameter here is and. So giving a valid customer thing exists in CIB when the system validates the thing during charge processing, then the correct debit account should be retrieved and the charge should be posted successfully. So one thing, like on that, they don't supply account number as part of the information, but we needed to get this account number to tell you that beyond them just requesting that please debit our customer charges, there are a lot of questions you need to ask. How do we do that? How do you go about to debit a customer's account? They are your customer, but they have accounts with us. They are not providing us the account number. So most times they will ask on that platform, provide your TIN. So we now looked at the customer. Okay, the unique identifier there is TIN. That's the thing. Why don't we use that TIN? Go on our own system, check if that customer TIN exists. Then once the customer's TIN exists, then we can now locate the account number. That is the business logic or rules, right, that the backend developers would have put into consideration. So when you get the account number, then you can debit. Now, we remember I said you don't just say a requirement and just take it to the designers and developers, and then you expect that your acceptance criteria is now they are not saying, now they said debit charge. How much is the charge? So the business might be documenting something and they've not told you specifically or drill down to details to say this is how much you should collect. So you must be able to ask questions. So I don't want to go further on this so that I think time is almost fast spent. This is 9:22, right? So let me just quickly do this. So now these are strengths and limitation. Sorry, I think this was an error, limitation and challenge. So for strengths, agile methodologies may require that all requirements be expressed in the form of testable acceptance criteria. Acceptance criteria are necessary when the requirements express contractual obligations. Acceptance criteria provide the ability to assess requirements based on agreed upon criteria. So when you are even document, that's why I told you initially that once the business document, they must document something. Please don't do the mistake of trying to be their document, their what do they scribe and just write what they are saying verbally. They should document exactly what they want. I feel that that should be a standard process. They should not necessarily document what a BA a BA artifact, but document something that tells us what you want so that tomorrow they won't say you guys went ahead to develop a solution that we did not say they should we did not ask you to add this component. So these are issues that the BA face most times, right? So most times you need to ensure that they agree with what has been documented. That is why we have we call them default stakeholders within a system that must look at a request, sign off on the request, and agree that yes, all these things you have specified, it is doable, it is okay, go ahead, so that you don't come back and they don't come back at you. Now, acceptance the limitation may express contractual obligation and as such may be difficult to change for legal or political reasons, right? So when you document, like what we do is that if you are, that's why you see on requirement life cycle management, which is one of the knowledge area, there's what we call assess requirement changes, right? There might be changes to requirements. Like imagine you can have in business, you can have a user, right, that you have done a thorough review with around the requirements, the process model, and once they've given a sign off on that, and then you are moving to prototype, you've done a review with them, clarified every gray area, and then they've signed off on it. They call it in product design usability sign off, usability testing. So once they sign off on it, we are expected that come, no matter what, there are no changes to requirements. No matter what, you are not changing anything there. If you want to change, raise another request. So now you will now have a user telling you that let's even see what you are developing, right? Which what I mean is that we are at the stage of where the developers are now coding what has been prototyped, the design, and they are now saying, let's even see what they are doing. Maybe when we see it, we might have another perspective, another perspective to what has been developed. And you are like, so you want us, do you know what it means to come up with a code and then you are trying to scatter the code and then eventually you come up with a bad or wrong solution, right? So you don't want to do that. So you must ensure that there are strict governance, right? Strict governance around that. So let me quickly. So this is an acceptance criteria using mobile banking app as a real example. So please we can just pay attention to this. If there are questions, you can ask, right? So now for banking mobile app, we can use our mobile app for this. We can use our mobile app. Thank God that we are very much familiar, and most of us here make transfers using our mobile app. So now for banking mobile app, we have login features. Before you can do anything, before you can access your mobile app, you must log in, right? You have balance inquiry. These are features. You have fund transfer. These are features. You have bill payments, transaction history, error handling, and security. Guess what? A business can document this thing like this and give to the BA. BA, please go and find a way to give us this thing. Login. So what is login? What are they using to log in? So imagine a BA that is not experienced or does not understand the rudiments or principles around business analysis. We just take this thing and go and be giving it to designer. And designer is like, login. Will I just go and design one button, red button that they write login, and then give it to developer? Balance inquiry. No. So that is where you have your elicitation and collaboration. Okay, you have said we should log in to this mobile app. What and what do we need? What are the credentials of the customers that now you have your mobile app now. If you try to log in, you need to enter your username and password. Why we have if most times we've even added biometric authentication where you can use your fingerprint. Now, like what I said, initially you have your mobile app. Now, your mobile app has only login and password. We now said, okay, for further security, additional security, let's add biometrics, your fingerprint. Okay, no, that's when they can now initiate a change request, trying to describe something for us to understand now. Okay, biometric is not enough. Let's protect this customer more. Let's do a facial authentication. Okay, this one is not enough. Why don't we? So we try to enhance the solution so that you will be comfortable with it. Now, login is not explicit enough to tell us to go and be developing or go and do so. Balance inquiry. What do you need to do for you to check your balance? Fund transfer. What are the things? So we want to develop an acceptance criteria for each of this, but we might not be able to touch base with all of them so that because of the poverty of time. So now it said acceptance criteria answer one question only. When do we accept this feature as done? When can you wipe your hand and say, okay, as a BO, we've met all your requirements, so we are good to go. We are done with this solution. Let's close out on it. Right. So let's look at acceptance criteria for each of these. I think I was able to cater for 4 of them. So now these are login features. So when you are coming up with an acceptance criteria, I told you that there is a getting method, which I said giving, when, then sometimes you can have and coming. So it depends on how but these parameters must be there, right? Giving and when, then and again, or it might not follow the sequence, but most times it follows this sequence. Now, when you want to have a successful login with, so this is one scenario. You want to have a successful login with valid credentials. So imagine now, guess what? What your business have given you is login. But it is your work to go and do due diligence to elicit further and get what they will be logging in with. Now, given the customer is registered on the banking app, guess what? You have to be able to you need to sign up on the application. Remember when you are entering you are logging into an application for the first time, right? Or maybe a website. And then you have, even on Facebook, if you don't have account with Facebook, you must be able to register first. These are preconditions. So if you have done anything around use cases before, use cases have one element called precondition. That one is what condition must have been met before you even proceed with that scenario. Now, see now, you now said, given see now, we didn't talk about registration. No. Now, go back. There is a login here. There should be a registration that has happened within the mobile app. You don't just go on install mobile app from Play Store or App Store, as the case may be, and start logging in. You must sign up and register. Now, given this customer is registered on the on the banking app, and the customer enters a valid username and password. Now, mark it valid username and password. You cannot enter a wrong password. So these are things you need to specify properly. When the customer taps the login button, then the system should authenticate the user and the user should be redirected to the dashboard. Now, if this is not met after the application has been developed, the developer don't even allow it to go to production. Sorry, I think I'm okay. So yes. Oh, sorry. Customer. Okay, no, this is. All right, so customer taps the login button, then the system should authenticate the user. So when you click on a login, there is a check in the background. So go and say, okay, look at the user that is trying to log in. Go and check our DB. Is the user there? If the user has been maintained, then grant him access to the dashboard. Now, this is one acceptance criteria. So the next one is now saying login fails with invalid password. So you need to even cater for the fact that a user or a customer can use invalid password to log on. So you might have catered for the valid password and you are smiling that yes, as a BA, I've specified and molded my requirements. It has met thorough expectation, yes. But now, what if the user use an invalid password? Now, given the customer enters a valid username, username is fine. Sorry. And the customer enters an invalid password. Many a times you are trying to log in and you are using an invalid password. When the customer taps the login button, then the system should deny access and display an error message stating invalid login credentials. So most times we use applications, you don't know that a lot of due diligence have gone through it. A lot of textual description of what should happen when a user do this, what should happen when it does not do this. These things have been done in the background. So it's not like they just came and developed one solution and then you start using it, it's usable and it's performing well. These are things that needs to be catered for. If this part is not there, right? If this user acceptance criteria is not there, guess what? Once they click on login, it is possible that they still get access, even if they use an invalid password, because they did not cater for that logic. So these things needs to be clear and simple for whoever will be using it. Now, this is for account balance inquiry. So I'll just run through it so as not to waste much time. View account balance successfully, right? Given the customer is logged into the banking app and the customer has at least one active account, when the customer navigates to the account balance screen, then the system should display the correct available balance and the balance should match the core banking system. How many of us we will log into our mobile app, you want to share, you just see your balance there. These things are things that have been specified and molded, right, by the business analyst. before it came live to you for you to use. Now, the system should display correct available balance. Now, another one says successful internal fund transfer, right? Trying to make a transfer within your mobile. Given the customer is logged in and the source account is sufficient, has sufficient balance, when the customer transfers 50,000 naira to another own account, that's your own account to another one, then the system should debit the source account and credit the destination account and display a successful transaction confirmation. These are acceptance criteria. If this is not met, please don't deliver it. So for other applications, I would have used other applications as examples, but time will not permit me. So they have other applications that we can also see this. We can also specify acceptance criteria for. So let's look at transfer fails through insufficient fund. Imagine you don't have money in your account. You want to now make transfer, or you don't have enough funds. You are making more than that funds in your account. Now, you need to specify that too. These are acceptance criteria. Transfer fails due to insufficient funds. Now, given the source account balance is 20K, right? 20,000 naira. When the customer attempts to transfer 50,000 naira, then the system should reject the transaction and display an insufficient fund message. So most times we specify, that when you want to now, if this was not specified or was not catered for, guess what? There is what they call negative balance, and you can just eventually go ahead to debit and your account is not funded or is not whereby, or maybe when you try to transfer you don't even get a correct display of telling you that it's insufficient fund, or you get a wrong message. So these are things that have been specified, right? So successful interbank transfer, we all make interbank transfer from GT to Zenith, from UBA to other banks, right? So given the customer enters a valid beneficiary account number, so the person you are sending the money to, it must be valid, because there is a validation endpoint. There's a system, there is a service. That's why I told you that these are logic that the backend developers, those guys are the main engine, right? So they need to validate the account number. And what you will see is that when you enter, like for example, you enter a phone number, the bank suggestion you get, you see OPay, MoneyPoint, you see different banks, right, suggesting that this is what these are the relevant banks. These are the relevant banks that this account number looks like, that it is tied or linked to. So enter a valid beneficiary account number and the beneficiary bank is supported, right? And the source account has sufficient funds. When the customer confirms the transfer, then the system, then the system should process the transaction and display a transaction reference number. So these are things that the BA must specify. So let me quickly move. I think we're almost coming to the last slide. So invalid beneficiary account number. Now you need to now cater for the opposite, which is invalid account number. So you can put a wrong account number. Now, given the customer enters an invalid beneficiary account number, when the system validates the account, then the system should reject the transfer and display invalid beneficiary details. So this is for bills payments. For example, you want to do your electricity bill where you have your meter number. We have functionalities for that also. So given the customer selects an electricity biller and enters a valid meter number and has sufficient balance, then the customer confirms payment. See, now this meter number must be valid, right? Because once you validate, you see that, for example, you enter your meter number, it should bring out your name, the name of the owner of that meter number, right? Before you can proceed. Now, then the system should debit the customer's account and generate a payment receipt and display a success message, right? That's for bill payments. Then transaction history. So I had to use this example, right? Because every one of us we transact on mobile apps, right? This is something we can relate with. So view transaction history. Given the customer is logged in, when the customer opens transaction history, Then the system should display transactions for the selected date range, and each transaction should show date, amount, and narration, right? So these are things that we need to consider when coming up with an acceptance criteria. And this is for security and session timeout. For example, you are in an application and you just went off for a while. So there is always a timeout, right? So given the customer is logged in and the app is inactive for 5 minutes, when the inactivity threshold is reached, then the system should log out the customer and redirect the user to the login screen. So this is just so important. I think I don't want to overflog this because of our time. So, but in all, right, there is a lot of work on the business analyst as a profession to ensure that because let me tell you the fact that in running traceability, right, when you look at your requirements, the prototype, the solution, now when they are tracing and maybe there is a solution failure or you are trying to do something and the product is failing, they will trace it back to you. They will first of all ask the product designer, was this part of your prototype? If the product designer says, no, this functionality is not there, they will go back to you. What did you elicit? What did you specify in your acceptance criteria? What did you ask the business? So these are areas we need to focus on. So that we don't come up with a failed solution. It is very, very important. So I will drop the ball here and probably if there are questions or comments, anything at all that probably it can be a contradiction or trying to get further clarity. So we can take that now. Thank you, everyone. I don't know if there are comments or okay. Can I get anybody just
Yeah,
alight?
thank you. For me, I just want to say thank you. This is well detailed.
Uh,
Thank you very much for the section. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Yeah, Zia. Thank you so much, sir. Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening. Good evening, Precious. Thank you for the cause. I have a question. You just talked about your if there are certain features or when you're talking about the developer, they'll have to come back to the developer to ask them if these particular scenarios were captured in the elicitation process, and if it wasn't, it will get back to the BA. My question is, being that the elicitation process would have been approved by the various stakeholders, in such a situation, what is the right process? Because what is the right process, especially as you have scenarios where the BA is contracted from outside, is contracted, so doesn't work inside that company, and so they had to have had multiple sessions with the various stakeholders, getting the requirements approved before passing it on to the dev team. And so if you get to the point where at the point of testing or at the point of approving the design, and there is now something wrong, how do you resolve that?
Okay, yeah, thank you so much, Zia. So the thing is, like, you would always encounter things like scope creep. Scope creep are requirements that were not earlier specified, but later it came up as a result of the ongoing process, right? So most times you see that is why going back to the BA, right, is because BAs are like the foundation to any project. So if, for example, some functionalities are not existing within an application, and maybe at the point where there is a bit of pilot stage. So at the point where you are piloting this application, and there are concerns being raised, right, in terms of some functionalities or some components, what the first thing they will do is to meet the developers that, okay, what is the problem? And if the developers are telling you that, oh, this is what we saw in the prototype, right, which is the design. Now there will be a fallback to the designer. Okay, this thing you prototyped or these functionalities you prototype, where did you what is missing, or is it that what these end users are saying are not were not considered? So if the guy with that does the prototype checks and says, okay, this was what was given to me on the requirement, right? So they will have to go back to the BA. Okay, was this considered during, right, during elicitation and collaboration? Was this specified or modeled? So the thing is that is why, I kept on emphasizing on the fact that the business users must document something, right? They must have to document something. They must have to document what they want. So now, if we now do a fallback on the artifacts that the BA has come up with, and then make reference to the documents that the business has also specified, and they see that something is, that particular requirement or that concern that was raised, right, is missing, it is no longer on you as the BA, right? It is only when in the process of your business analysis activities, it was the BA, it was Zia that omitted that concern that they raised. That is where there will be a problem with you, right? So that is why I said at the minimum, you want to have a document that specifies what the business wants. And if it was not there, right, because what they have specified went through the governance process, other stakeholders have approved and signed off on it. So but when they now see that that thing is not there, what they need to do is to go back and raise a change request to incorporate that concern. So it is no longer on you. But there are times, right? I had a project I did one recently, that requirement was omitted at the prototype level. So when the designer was designing, he omitted some fields, some required fields. So when they came back to the BA was confident enough to show them what he has specified and say, this was there now, but it was omitted at the prototype level, right? So that is why when they say collaboration, it's an handshake between everybody involved in the project. Don't even give any gap. As they are prototyping, you are looking, is this one there? Is this a functionality there? Are these fields complete? So these are what you need to ensure that you do, so that at the end, they will not come back to you. So now, if it is not being missed at the prototype level, you now check your documents. Was it missed out? You now go back to the business need. I call it stated requirement that the business has initiated. Was it there? If it wasn't specified, ask them to raise a change request. So it is no longer on you. But if it was omitted in your business analysis process, then you have to take full responsibility for it, right? So that's all I could. So it's possible there might be other responses or reaction to it. So Zia, I don't know if that is okay.
Yes, thank you. That's
All right,
fair.
thank you so
Thank you.
much. All right, thank you so much. All right, thank you. So I don't know if there are any other questions before we draw a curtain for the day. Okay, I guess there are no questions. Okay, let me see if it's a question on the chat box. Thanks to, okay. All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Bibi. All right, so I think we can draw a curtain for today. I hope I meet every one of you again on another session, but we'll be closing out now. Thank you so much for your participation, and wish you a restful night.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so
Good
much.
night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. Yeah. All right, bye.